today we have these two remarkable artists and collaborators and life partners who are bringing to us the opera. And the opera is, for all of us, super interesting, not just because we have here a musician and you will be working more with the music and with the sound and the filmmaker, because the opera is such a complex piece that combines so many different disciplines, and that's what we are talking here in our interdisciplinary class. So, I want first to give you a little introduction into who these amazing people are and how we actually met. So, okay, let's start with Lesley. This is what I picked up from internet, so I didn't have to learn by heart. Lesley Dill is a visual artist. Let's do this. You can find more about her on internet. Lesley is a painter, printmaker, sculptor, photographer, and performance artist. And she really, what she introduced to us when we went to visit in Lesley's studio, everything starts with the language. And Lesley will talk more about it. You were all introduced to Emily Dickinson's poetry. I hope everybody watched the video and additional information, because that will be really the focus and the basis, actually the basis of this presentation. Lesley will talk more about her work, especially on opera. Lesley is a distinguished artist, and her work is included in many collections. And I think what we want to say that she will be awarded a special award in Washington, D.C. When?
December 9th.
December 9th, a special award for her achievements in art. And we have another person here, and that's Edward Robbins. And Edward is also teaching at Columbia University, so this is what we pulled from their website. Edward is a journalist, a filmmaker. He collaborated with Lesley on this piece, which is more of the performance piece. However, he has a long history of working as a journalist and filmmaker on the field in Afghanistan, Burma, Colombia, Iraq, all these hot places, bringing meaningful stories about people and their efforts, I think, to survive and thrive, what I saw on your account. And as a digital journalist, he is teaching, as well as Lesley, teaching in where?
A little bit. Lesley doesn't teach. She lectures.
travel.
She's a visiting
Okay.
visiting lecturer.
So Lesley also shared her knowledge. So this was a very brief introduction. You understand we have like two quite different people coming from different interests, but collaborating in this interdisciplinary field. So Olga and I put a little bit slideshow before we open with this lecture, and we want to say first welcome to our interdisciplinary class. We were very interested always in searching for more content about the merger of typography and different disciplines. So this is how we were first introduced to your work when we met 6 months ago at the School of Visual Arts SVA Theater. Then we were invited to the studio, so you will have a special glimpse into the working environment of these two artists. And this is us posing among all this typography and being inspired by the work in progress that's actually happening right now in their Brooklyn studio. They will tell us a little bit more about it. And this is how this idea of doing this lecture and presentation came about. So this is just for you, a little glimpse into how this interesting relationship started. So this was the introduction. Okay, so the first part.
Let's just show the film.
We'll show the film
Let's
first.
show the film.
Yes.
14 minutes.
and would as on surmise is in its grief compelling to ascertain its size. Thy loneliness must I love, as lest his shall should see. Just how scrutiny. There is a pain so utter, so no substance of, then covers the abyss with trance, with trance, as one within us wound goes safely, where in life would drop in bone by bone. The horror. Take all away from me, but leave me ecstasy, ecstasy, ecstasy. I am richer than all my fellow men. It becometh me to so take all away from me, but leave me ecstasy, ecstasy, ecstasy. I am richer than all my fellow men. In abject poverty, I am richer than all my fellow men. Take all away from me, but leave me ecstasy, ecstasy, ecstasy. I am richer than all my fellow men. And I am richer than all my fellow men.
Here we have our guests. I think it's for you. It's super interesting the fact if you just look the credits at the closing of the film, you do understand how humongously complex a project like this, and how many people had to join forces with two of you to create this. So Lesley and Ed have the presentation ready.
So, as you know, we are all animals of language. All the words that were and all the words that will be lie sleeping in our body. One of the best ways for language, for words to enter into our bodies is through song. The first time I really woke up to music was when I was doing a project in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I walked into the Emmanuel Baptist Church and I heard the spiritual choir singing. I heard a voice. I walked into the church while they were singing, and I didn't know anyone in the church at this time because of my project. I was out scouting, and I walked into the church and I heard them singing, and it felt like a dream. It felt like as if all the pores in my body just opened up like that, and the sound came into my body, and I became the music, and the music became me. Then, the following year, I did another community project in Boulder, Colorado, and I met this amazing man, Tom Morgan, who is the composer and conductor of Ars Nova Singers in Colorado. And we had a rapport, and he said, "Why don't you come and work with us?" So I said, "Great." He said, "Why don't you come to a rehearsal?" Well, this is actually a performance. So we actually wrote that song together, and then we continued working together. And this is why I wanted this opera to be a choral opera, because of my history of opening up to the sound of the music and the words to those two choruses. I have to say, I played the sound of the Ars Nova Singers on the phone to my mom. I held the phone up during a rehearsal. And she said, "Oh, dear, they are wonderful. What do they need you for?" I'm sure we all have various relationships with our parents, but she's very, very supportive. And in fact, it is my mom who changed my life by giving me this book 30 years ago of Emily Dickinson poetry. When I opened the book of Emily Dickinson poetry, I was one kind of a person. And after I started reading and having the words come into me, I swooned. I felt that the words knew more about me than I knew about the words. So I read and read and read, and I fell in love. The swoon followed falling in love. Such language as, you saw, the thrill came slowly like a boon for centuries delayed. I like a look of agony because I know it's true. The loneliness one dare not sound. The brain is wider than the sky. So here is, I'm afraid to own it. This is how the opera starts that you heard today. I am afraid to own a body. I'm afraid to own a soul, profound, precarious property, possession not optional, and double estate entailed at pleasure. So, I mean, this would be sex, right? Double estate entailed at pleasure upon an unsuspecting heir, duke in a moment of deathlessness, and God for a frontier. How luminous, how transcendent, how true. So Tom and I were wondering, well, we've done a few albums together. What should we do next? And the Arts Center in San Jose that was supporting us, bringing us there, they said, why don't you do something big? We want to support you and we'll write a grant for the Rockefeller Foundation. And we said, great. And Tom said, why don't we do something with Dickinson? Because you know her so well. And I, oh, okay. And then he said, what should we do? And I said, we should do an opera. Not knowing that much about opera, but I said, we should do an opera. He said, why? I said, because their voices have such depth and such height and such range. Their voices are like Dickinson's words. So, I don't read music. So how does someone who does not read music communicate with a composer? So I would communicate with Tom in the way in which I knew, which is to draw. So I would draw like the beginning of the sound and then the braiding of the voices and then the voices opening up into different sounds. So this is how we communicated. And this is how he communicated. I am afraid to own a body. I am afraid to own a soul. And beauty crowds me till I die. We people who work with music and with text, sometimes we deform the very beautiful poetry that we're working with to make it into a song. So songs have refrains, they have rhythm. So you see, beauty crowds me till I die, beauty crowds me till I die, beauty crowds me till I die. So there's an insistence, and there's a pulse, and there's a meaning to the repetition of the way in which they're sung, which is also very true of the beginnings of choral music, shape note singing in America. So what is our story? I saw your stories this morning, and story is what, in my mind, grabs the attention. So how can you make a story about a book of poetry where there's no beginning and there's no end in the book of the collected poems? So I thought, all right, there is a story. So what's the story? The story is fear and vulnerability and poignancy. I am afraid. I am afraid to own a body. I'm afraid to own a soul. And from there, we went down. We went down to what I thought was the lowest point, which is loneliness. Not death, not pain, but loneliness. The sense of being alone in the world was the lowest. And then we moved up to exhilaration and ending with ecstasy. Take all away from me, but leave me ecstasy. So the hope is that the audience, even though there was not this story, this is the story that I didn't do, that I think people wanted me to do. So the prince is on the horse. The prince is on the horse, and he goes into the deep, dark forest on the horse in the woods. He looks up, he sees the golden bird. He takes his golden arrow and he shoots the golden bird. She falls to his feet and turns into the youngest daughter of the king of the country, who gallops up and puts him in prison. So that is more a typical opera story, whereas this one hopefully had the same feelings, but in emotional music form, without literal characters. So then, to my horror, Tom Morgan, my dear Tom Morgan, got very sick, and he had to drop out of the project. Now, I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? I am not a composer, and that this would be a night, actually, that happened, that when I was just sobbing on the couch, it just felt all out of control. It's really great to have a good friend who can come and go, oh no, honey, it's going to be all right. No, it's not. And so I somehow I advertised, and I found this great guy who is this easygoing California guy. So this is Richard Marriott, and we also work together really well. He is a fabulous composer. And this is how we communicated. He lives in California, I live in Brooklyn. So he would send me MP3 files, and then we would talk about them. I'd go, you know, that rhythm, could it slow down? And then, be, you know, so I didn't do drawings anymore, but we would talk on the phone. And here it is. The slide that we had up was of a set of a very traditional opera. The set has flames, it has big archways. It has simulacra of marble sculptures. So you can see what my opera is not. It is not this. And my friends told me, Lesley, if you're going to, you should first of all just call it an oratorio or a performance piece. You're an artist. I said, no. I want this to be an opera because of Emily Dickinson. I want her to have an opera of her words. So what to do? Because we couldn't afford California, Brooklyn. The first opera was performed in San Jose and the second one here in Manhattan. The first one had 3 operatic voices and it had 45 choral voices and the Del Sol string quartet. So it was very different because it had the big chorus, the 3 singers, and then the costumes I had no director. I was not experienced. I thought, all right, well, the costumes will be the choreography. And so we worked around that for that. And then and I got one of those emails in the mail, Dear Lesley, would it be possible, we are a small opera company, and we are wondering if we could possibly restage your opera. So what to do? I didn't know what to do, but it happened that I had someone who was living in my very apartment who knew what to do.
So what to do is where I came in. Basically, we couldn't build sets. We didn't have that kind of money. There was so many people involved, and it was far away in California. It was a big open stage. So a couple of things went on. Lesley had been toying with the idea of sort of abstract colors, shifting shapes in the background as a kind of set. But, in discussions with her, I basically said, that's really going to get boring and repetitive for 70, 80, 85 minutes, whatever the original opera was. That's not going to have enough guts to it. And I'm a narrative filmmaker. I make documentaries, so I'm all about reality story and whatever. But I did go to art school. And I also, when I got out of art school, I did a bunch of animations as well before I became a documentarian. So I said, okay, I knew Lesley's work, having spent my life with her. I knew Lesley's work, and among her work, she had done a whole series of photographs that she turned into art. So that began as a photo shoot, but she knew she would transform it but without Photoshop. This is all her handwork. That's 8 or 10 foot. I think maybe MoMA has that. I'm not sure. Museum of Modern Art. But it's a big piece. But I knew that the photos that these artworks that she created were available, and I decided that'll be the basis, not her other artwork, not photos of her work, but these photographs I could bring to life with this limited animation, because I could understand how to animate these in a limited way. And so these kind of images, I started pouring through maybe 200 images that she'd taken over a few years. I started making selections of the photographs before they were transformed into the art, and finding photos that somehow abstractly fit with the song. That we had a 20 or so song cycle, and I started matching, and I started creating rules, because you want to tell a story, you want to gain control, right? A story is a journey, and you need control at each step to limit it and restrict it. And so I decided, discussing it with Lesley, that we would do one image, not a whole mess of images, boom, 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 just one image per song, and that each image would move incredibly slowly, basically. Because as a videographer, as a video person, I really don't like a lot of the backdrops that I've seen in video in theaters. They take away from the foregrounds. They get so carried away with their fast cuts and their beautiful, film, that it doesn't really create a meditative state, which is a lot of what this opera was about possession by words. And so I wanted to capture the slowness of that. So it's almost your mind drifts into the back, but there's a powerful relationship between the image. And then I had to figure out how to add words. But before that, this is a slide of, so that's how that photo is made, just for your interest, sort of not photoshopped, it's all done.
So again, not photoshopping anything. All of these photos were taken with my friends and my interns and my assistants, and so we glued threads on Jen's face. It was also Jen's hand that we tied candles to, and she was down with the candle wax dripping. And then also the tongue, we tied a string around her. I tied, you do a lot of things you never thought you would do in high school. So I tied and we would pull the string so that it would have, and I saw this in your really wonderful videos this morning, that you just have to keep at it, because the string would just pull right off, and we caught it. So that was really great.
So super glue.
Oh yeah, and this I glued the ribbons to her eyes, and afterwards she was just like, and also she had a piercing here, and it kept so she took it out, and it kept oozing during the photo shoot, so we had to keep, yeah.
So these are some of the images I was looking through and getting ideas with. And then I took these kind of images and I started thinking, okay, so how can I animate them very simply? How can I add movement? And so I started to use PowerPoint to create a storyboard. Has anyone done animation type work? I think that potato chip is obvious. That's great. Fabulous. So you have to you do the in-betweens, right? In an animation, there's hundreds of images that animate, but then there's the in-betweens every period of time. So, and each song had a duration, so the animation had to somewhat be tied to that duration. So I had to figure that out, and I created these very, slowly, the face could start low, could rise up, and I kept taking these kinds of images. You saw this image is what became of that image. And so then I took all these images assigned to the song, and I gave those to Lesley and say, okay, this is what each song is. That's for that song, that's for that song, that's for that song. And I started to get a storyboard together. Lesley took those images and pinned them to the timeline so she could have a visual cue for each step of the opera. And then I really started animating. So here's the image. And in the opera, it's in a song you didn't see, but this dress, you don't even know what it is for about 20 seconds. It's just this white thing descending from the top. And then it just slowly, she descends. And then she becomes center stage. And then she splits off into many. But it's by creating a rule that I can only use one image that you force yourself to go, oh my God, I have another minute to go and I've already run out of time having her drift down to the middle. So what do? Oh, I will split it. So you can see how creativity comes out of rules and limitations for yourself. And so then the next layer would be the text. Then you have to figure out a way to add the poems to the text. And this poem actually came out of her hand and sort of wove up and down like a snake and emerged in animation. So I created this storyboard. I unfortunately couldn't find the storyboard. It was done a while ago, but these are pages from the storyboard that Lesley then printed out and started to make notes on. And I also had a rule that each song would start with its own title, an animated title. And separately, there'd be an animation after that title. So there's actually two animations. There was pure text, and then there was the text and image animations. And so here's another example of, you saw this in the title, how it evolved. So that's when these amazing letter works started happening on early version, 10 years old version of After Effects. And that is thanks to two SVA graduate students. So we were desperate. I know nothing about I know a little about After Effects, but I could never create the animations. So we needed to hire someone, and we did a search, and we got these two amazing SVA students recommended to us. They were just incredible. And they took my storyboard, and they ran with it, and again, there was another level of creativity. I mean, at first they were a little tentative, but as they got used to what they could do with the words, you saw some of those swirling, three-dimensional words. They brought their own creativity to it as well in a way that I never could have. And this is how I end on the credits. It's a wonderful image. These words, you saw the original. I had suggested this idea, but they really carried it out of these words drifting down the lines, like power lines into her face. It's a gorgeous image, and they were just amazing. I'll show you their names again, because they're really incredible people, young 20-somethings. Now they're married and they live in separate places, but anyway. So these are some of the ways that words started to animate and slowly add this other element. And here we were asked to have a sample of the actual animations without my manipulations in the film. So here's a title. That's what they took for one of the titles. And here's one animation starting. There's a little black between them, and then the animation will start. So this is the one I showed you the storyboard of. And just imagine, you hardly notice it. It doesn't intrude on what the singers are doing, in my mind. It's just this sort of mystical drift to me. And then suddenly you see it's this amazing woman in this incredible dress. And then it keeps transforming. So this is a song called The Soul Has Bandaged Moments. I skipped ahead in the animation. So this is that part you saw in the storyboard. Now you can see they're splitting apart, drifting, and they kept, one of the things I love about animation is the idea of metamorphosis, is the idea of everything becomes something else continually. So everything had to be seamless, the way the movie in a way is seamless. It doesn't have cuts, it has dissolves. And here's where they really started to get into these complicated three-dimensional movements, which 10 years ago were really hard to pull off on After Effects. Now, so those are some samples of the animations in progress, and I will return you to, I'll talk about the film itself later, but this is the process, right? So we had to do this to specific lengths of the song as we were collaborating, like, oh, that's another 20 seconds, we'll have to do another 20 seconds of animation on that. So, yeah, they did this incredible work. It took them so long to do all those words coming out of her hair. But I turn you over to, oh, this is my favorite one of my favorites. You saw that in the film. So now I will turn you over to Lesley.
Oh, I forgot. Okay. Don't miss him. He's coming back in just a few seconds. So again, opera is about costumes. It is about a sumptuous celebration and, of course, obsessive tactility. So here was my sketch for the cellist's costume. It had to be something that she could spread her legs so she could put the cello in. So we made one in panels. So here I am with my summer interns working on the floor, which you saw in Olga's photos. And here's the sketch for the divide light costume. And here is it being experimented with in my studio, beloved Sarah and others. And here we are experimenting again. And here it is in performance and in the other performance as well. And then here is the ribbon pull suit. And here it is in the studio. And here it is in performance.
The ribbons are pulled out of the costume. They were hidden in the costume, and they were slowly pulled out.
I wanted an austere kind of action. My own rule was that music is king. So I would tell whichever composer I was working with, you are the god. Music is king. Whatever we do is only to enhance, to work with the music. So there is a hierarchy: music, visuals, costumes. Oh, here's the power apron, all rolled up in the studio, beginning in the studio, ending in the studio, and on stage. And then your lovely teachers asked me to talk about fonts a little bit. So we lived in New Delhi, India for 2 years, many years ago. And here I am in India, as you can see. So you see what's written on his arm? Those are Hindi words that are written on his arm. And I fell in love with the experience of not knowing what I was reading or hearing in the shimmering white sound of a New Delhi summer. And I'm sure many of you who travel, or if you are from countries other than here, or even when you are on the subway, when you hear language that you don't understand, there's something mesmerizing about it, and usually quite beautiful. So I've always been, since then, attracted to the idea of some level of linguistic incomprehensibility in my work. So I have used a couple of different fonts, mainly Old English, which I love, and it reminds me a lot of this. And also Times New Roman. And here is another costume. This was who would not want to wear an ecstasy costume? So here's a big E underneath for ecstasy, and here, he's revealing, like flashing ecstasy. And here's the thrill skirt, and here it is in performance. I really like men in skirts. And here is the beauty dress, the spinning dress. Here it is in my studio with Lisa. And here it is in performance with Eva. And here's the finale dress, the red ecstasy dress. And actually, I based a lot of the shapes of the dresses on Japan. I like the parallelogram receding into space idea. So here it was beginning in the studio, and then here it was ending in the studio. And then here it was as the finale in the piece. And so here we are. This is how I work with teams of beloved interns, and we were so tired at the end of doing this opera. We were really happy, but here we had a team, and what are we going to do with our time? There was just a day when we all gathered and we thought, oh my God, what are we going to do? So we were hanging out with Claudia and Aki, and we thought, wow, they are such good friends. I bet Claudia would really like to have a costume that makes her look like Aki. And I bet Aki would really like to have a costume that makes her look like Claudia. So here's Aki looking at Claudia in her Aki costume. And here is Claudia looking really happy in her Aki costume. And here's Aki not looking, she looks more wounded soldier than happy camper, but nevertheless, there we are. And I believe
then the opera got performed.
And then everything got performed, and now I'm going to hand it over to you, because without the film, I would not be standing here in front of you today. So thank you, Ed, for our...
So the opera that was performed in New York City was a truncated version. It was 8 people and a quintet, whereas in California 10 years ago, it was, I think, 70 people on stage. So it was quite different, and the original was in a big, giant outside theater, so I had a lot of room to film. This was in a smaller New York theater where the audience was right up against the performers. So it was a little tough challenge. I spent a long time editing it, and I shot for 3 nights, and I used multiple cameras each night, because I wanted to do layers. I knew I wanted to recreate not just a documentation, but to create its own unique object that was not a documentation of the opera, but somehow was a more visceral, experiential correlate to being in this space. As a viewer, your eye moves all across the stage as performers work. Sometimes someone's singing, your eye drifts up to the animation. Sometimes your eye drifts to the musicians. So I wanted to somehow get that more internalized experience of being there in a visceral way inside the head. And the layering is something that Lesley also does in her work. There's a book that, again, the Museum of Modern Art has, that she did of layers of pages where you can see through several of the images. She often does that in her bigger artworks as well. So this idea of layering really appealed to me, and rather than hard cuts with the rhythm of the music, I wanted it to be sort of this thing of itself, like a tapestry of imagery that was separate from the opera, but somehow caught the experience of being there. So then you get what you wished for. When I had so many cameras, I had to deal with it. So I don't know if any of you guys are starting to edit. This is my timeline on one of the dozens of timelines I have in my computer. So each of those little boxes is a cut from the film, little clip. I also, since I shot on so many different nights, everyone is out of sync, right? Because they sing at slightly different speeds each night. So usually I couldn't last on a single image for more than like 10 seconds before I had to cut away in order to get back in sync. So each of those images is hand synced to the music. I'm hand pushing it a frame or two to the left or the right. Music is on the bottom. There's about 5 or 6 tracks of music I laid in. And up top, I had about 10 tracks, including subtitles. And I just started working it with all these different angles. There were some technical challenges. This is the color exposure correction guide. This is what a lot of since they changed the lighting scheme I was working on a film, I had nothing to do with the lighting of the new opera, and they decided on a new lighting scheme from night into day at the end, into dawn. So the night part, not so good for filming. So they would throw us in a dark room, they would throw a giant spotlight on someone, and there'd be a video screen. So if anyone knows anything about this, it means this is one color light. The light's coming down from the house are a different color in terms of the camera. And you can see how blasted out she is. And so that's the color corrected version, as you saw in the film. So to do that, I had to create these hand masks of the brighter spots so I could compensate for this dark room I had come back with. So each of these is hand done, and then I have to do many of them because it has to animate for the whole 10 seconds of the shot or 5 seconds of the shot. And there's probably about 5 of these on this one image. There's one here, there's one for the background, there's one for the figure here, there's one for the screen to change the color. So each of these could take hours, each individual image. Here's another screen of the floor. The screen has its own, each individual actor has, you see I outlined him, and as he moves, I had to change that mask to follow his movements so he would be lighter. And this is the layering I talked about, where I started to really weave the letters, the animations, and the backdrop all together. And this is a close-up. You can see how it came together in the end. This is the final timeline where I simplified it and brought it down to the key images. And each of those little dots you see, that's hand put in. Hand put in to raise the music or adjust something. Keyframes. And that's it.
First, thank you so much for coming and for spending time this is actually custom presentation for you guys, because we went, thank you so much, back and forth, trying to put together, helping this wonderful team put together something that you will also appreciate as interdisciplinary design students. You understand now how complex the process is just to make the stage performance, and then how complex is to put it together in a film. It's like two huge productions. So let's have 5 minutes conversation, questions, because our class will be ending in 7 minutes or so. So we need to speed it up. Olga, do you want to say something before we start questions? How amazing. Yeah, exciting.
Thank you for giving us such excellent homework assignments.
I also want to say that I think the special flavor for me is that it's all handmade costumes, handmade. It's a digital production, but it is a handmade. The voices, there is a raw quality of voice.
Even the film is handmade. I mean, I'm sitting there manipulating each image.
Absolutely. On all different levels, it's handmade. It brings us back to earth, that no matter how far we are in technology, our senses are still very, very raw. And that's what's the beauty of it.
Okay. Quick questions. I see questions for students. Questions? No. We'll go straight to teachers. Do you want to say something?
I have a question, yeah. One, is this on? Oh. Two things. One, your work kind of reminds me of like early, some of the Dada and Bauhaus, operas and some of the art.
Ballet mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. But are you going to be doing another one? It seems like this is so fitting for a series.
Does anyone have a gun? It's too much work.
It's so
an
much
insane amount
work.
of work. Takes over everything. Lesley's also a gallerist, a gallery artist who has to do her whole career, which has a lot of pressure. She has a museum show coming up. She's going to New Orleans in a couple of days for a big show there. So it's a huge interruption.
But
and I'm doing
thank you
films
for, it's a lovely question.
on TV, so it's insane. But yeah.
It was yeah.
But thank you for the...
Thank you for that compliment. Who knows? Never say no, right? So.
The grant is big enough.
Exactly. Didn't have a grant for the second one. I didn't get paid. So do what you love. It's not about money.
I saw the film when it was shown at SVA Theater. I think it was back in June, maybe something like that. Yeah, it's just so amazing to see the whole process that, behind it, and you really feel just so immersed by it, and I would even say embraced by it. So, the words really, I mean, they're just absolutely charged, with life and energy, and it's just wonderful. And I love the costumes. And so you designed the costumes along with some.
No, how you made them? Hand sewed them.
You handmade.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any left over? Because I would. I love them. I want
Halloween.
one.
A museum in... There was a big exhibition of Lesley's performance work, because she's done other performances with costuming, smaller ones, not necessarily.
I think of them as art now, that they should not go in. They're cleaned, and I think that they should not go into performance
If you do
again.
another exhibition, yeah, I would love to see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, I feel it's almost time for us to say thank you once more. We would try, if it's possible, to bring this, your lecture and your presentation on a higher level. Olga and I spoke about how we can create a bigger event for larger SVA audience. So we hope this is a probe that will help us push this further and share with more people. So for our students, do you feel this is exciting?
Inspiring.
It's inspiring, and I think it shows how challenging it is, but also it shows how wonderful it is and how many options you have and how far you can push it.
And notice that how many times we both said we didn't really know what we were doing, or
didn't.
we didn't really know what we were getting into, but you start someplace. I started like, oh my God, I just started looking at images.
Also how personal their art is, how they create something to the public, opera, but how it's rooted in your hearing the sound.
And you don't get yeses all the way. You know, there was my mom, who I love, but there are also people along the way that said, no, you can't do an opera with her words. Or it'd be like, no, you have to have sets. You know, so they're just in your lives. No's are good because it makes you reevaluate. But if no's are combined with too much doubt, which we all have, because it's also called decisions. So you need cheerleaders, which you have two of here, and you have your friends and the people that you're with. So take in the criticisms, but keep moving. Keep moving.
And at each stage, it was a limitation, I think, that made it move forward.
That's true.
Like, she was not going to do the life of Emily Dickinson and get all sentimental.
No.
That was a big decision. That took away a narrative arc right there.
I interviewed one director. She said, so, all right, so I see Emily sitting at a typewriter and typing. And I mean, you know, really, we know.
She was from 1800s. They didn't have typewriters.
We know. Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson is a star now. She has a TV show. She has a couple of movies. She's on a blog. And so that would be your phone.
Now she has opera too.
And now, I can't remember. I lost.
Sorry.
That's okay. So, I can't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, it's her words. Because she was so reclusive, and it's only now that we're, you know, was she straight, was she gay, was she fat, was she thin? Personally, who cares? The words are so fantastic. Let's just go with the words. So that's our gift.
It's just the text of Emily Dickinson, who's become like 5 times as famous from when Lesley first started working with her.
Yeah, unknown. Yeah,
She now has her own TV series
I know. I just
coming up. Emily.
Dickinson.
is it?
Something.
I think so.
I don't know, there's so
Actually, it
much.
looked funny, but
So Lesley spent decades working with Emily's work, and she's expanded out from that.
And you can tell, you know, this is a deep work, research. That's what we spoke about today, spoke before, and that it's coming out from your own place.
And remember to be alone, because sometimes you need the solitude. You need the space when you're not watching TV, which I actually watch all the time, but when you're not watching TV, somewhere alone. Like, I often get a lot of ideas on the subway. They just sort of pop up because my mind is not engaged with, I don't text, or everything falls apart. But I find whenever my mind is disengaged, somehow, falling asleep, waking up, having a dream, that those are moments when you can get answers to your assignments, to your goals, to your dreams.